He expected a homecoming. Instead, Lucas Hale stepped into a silence that felt staged. The town he'd once known moved like a place rehearsing grief, avoiding him with careful glances and closed doors. Every familiar street carried the weight of something unsaid, something people were trying too hard to hide. And when Lucas reached his family home, only to find it locked, dark, and strangely untouched, the quiet cut deeper than any battlefield fear. By sundown, it became undeniable. This wasn't distance. It was a warning. Staff Sergeant Lucas Hale had imagined this moment in the desert dust settling behind the convoy. Sun beating against his helmet, body aching for home. He pictured warm arms, familiar voices, and the soft relief that came with knowing he had survived another deployment. But when the bus hissed to a stop at the edge of his hometown in North Carolina, a strange chill slid beneath his skin. Home was supposed to feel like an exhale. Instead, it felt like holding his breath. The midday sun shone bright across Maple Ridge, the same quiet American town he'd grown up in. Kids used to race bikes down the sidewalks, neighbors waved from open porches, and the smell of barbecue drifted across the community on weekends. Now, the streets stretched empty, too quiet, like a movie set paused between takes. Lucas stepped off the bus, boots touching the pavement like he was crossing into enemy territory. He waited for anyone to appear, but only a few cars passed, each slowing slightly, as if the drivers recognized him, but weren't sure whether to stop or keep going. They chose to keep going. A knot tightened in his stomach. He slung his duffel bag over his shoulder and walked toward Main Street. The barber shop still had the same red, white, blue pole spinning lazily in the window. The cafe on the corner still displayed chalkboard quotes and deals of the day. But the windows felt darker, the air heavier, the town older in a way time alone couldn't explain. A woman exited the post office, glanced his way, then quickly diverted her eyes. Lucas recognized her, Mrs. Patterson, who used to hand out Halloween candy by the bucket. Usually talkative, usually warm. "Ma'am," Lucas called gently. She startled, fumbled the envelope in her hand, then forced a stiff smile. "Lucas, welcome home," she said, voice thin. "Good to see you. Good to see you too," he replied. "Everything okay around here?" Her smile faltered. "Oh, you know, small towns. Things change." Then she stepped aside, murmuring, "Take care," and rushed off before he could say another word. Lucas watched her go, confusion prickling the back of his neck. That wasn't small-town change. That was avoidance. He continued walking, passing storefronts that looked untouched but felt wrong. A man sweeping outside the hardware shop paused mid-stroke when he saw Lucas. His eyes shifted with a mix of guilt and fear, recognition without welcome. Lucas nodded politely, but the man only gave a stiff nod back and turned away. By the time Lucas reached Elmwood Drive, the silence had grown too loud. His heartbeat sounded louder than his footsteps. This was the street he used to race his younger brother Aiden on hot summer days. He remembered Aiden's laugh, bright, reckless, faster than his legs. Lucas had dreamed of hearing it again, but as he reached the Hale family home, the breath caught in his throat. The house stood exactly as he remembered it, white porch, blue shutters, wind chimes hanging by the window. But it looked deserted. No car in the driveway, no curtains pulled back, no faint music from the living room. Even the porch plants were dead, dried into brittle stems. Lucas climbed the steps and tried the front door. Lock. That never happened. Growing up, the Hales kept their door open for neighbors, friends, and anyone who needed a meal. His mother always said, "A locked door means a locked heart." And that's not how we live. Yet here he was, keyless, staring through the glass at an empty hallway layered in dust. He knocked, waited, knocked again. No footsteps, no voice, nothing. He pulled out his phone. No missed calls, no new messages. He had texted his family, "Today's earlier flight confirmed, home soon." There should have been responses, excitement, something. Instead, there was only silence. Lucas checked the back door, also locked. He circled around to the yard, noticing weeds climbing up the fence, toys abandoned in the grass from who knew when, and an overturned chair near the porch that looked like it had been left mid-moment, mid-life. He didn't like the way this felt. Finally, he walked to the neighbor's house, Mrs. Miller had lived there since before Lucas was born, always greeting him with iced tea on the porch. He knocked gently. A minute passed before she opened the door, just enough to peek through. Her face softened and hardened at the same time. "Lucas," she whispered. "Hi, Mrs. Miller. I can't seem to find my family." "Do you know where?" "Honey, this isn't a good time," she interrupted, voice trembling. "You should go rest, maybe check back later." "Rest? I have it even." She cut him off again, eyes shifting behind him as if watching for someone. "It's complicated. I'm sorry, truly, just go home for now." "Home is empty," Lucas said quietly. Pain flickered across her expression. Then she closed the door without another word. Lucas stood frozen, fists clenching and unclenching. None of this made sense. He had been gone a long time, but not long enough for people to change this much. Not long enough for his family to vanish. The silence around him didn't feel natural, it felt orchestrated, as if everyone had agreed to keep something from him. He walked back toward the house. Stopping at the porch, he sat on the top step, duffel beside him, staring out at the street that had shaped him. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the lawn. A dog barked in the distance, but even that sound felt muted, swallowed by the strange stillness gripping the town. A sudden gust of wind knocked the loose wind chimes, sending a hollow metallic ring across the yard. It echoed like a warning. Lucas exhaled slowly. He'd survived firefights, ambushes, and nights where the world felt inches from ending. But this quiet abandonment felt like a different kind of threat. One he wasn't trained for. Something had happened here. Something big. Something no one wanted to talk about. And as the first hint of evening settled over Maple Ridge, Lucas realized the truth he'd been trying to ignore since stepping off the bus. The silence wasn't accidental. It was hiding something. Something connected to his family. Something connected to Aiden. And whether the town wanted him to or not, he was going to find out what it was. The truth was closer than he realized, and far darker than the silence suggested. Lucas barely slept that night. He had spent hours on the porch, listening to the creak of the empty house behind him, trying to convince himself that everything would make sense in the morning. But dawn only brought more questions. His mother's car still wasn't in the driveway. No messages, no footprints in the dew-covered grass. The silence refused to loosen its grip. He walked toward town as the sun pulled itself over the trees, casting long, uneasy shadows across Maple Ridge. The stillness of the morning didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a breath held too long. Lucas headed straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dalton had watched him grow up, taught him to fish, signed his recommendation letter for the Marines. If anyone would give him answers, it would be him. Inside, the office smelled of coffee and dust. Dalton looked up from his paperwork, expression tightening the moment he recognized him. "Lucas Hale," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't know you were back. Got in yesterday," Lucas replied. "I've been trying to reach my family. House is locked. No one's home. Do you know where they've been staying?" Dalton hesitated. A long, calculated pause. "Your mom's been staying with a friend for a few days." "Why?" Another pause, and this one said too much. "Look," Dalton said quietly, "I don't think I'm the right person to explain this. I think you're exactly the right person." Lucas said, voice sharpening. "Where's Aiden? Something's wrong. Everyone's acting like I'm radioactive." Dalton rubbed the back of his neck. "It's complicated, son, then uncomplicated it." The sheriff sighed heavily, eyes shifting to the bulletin board behind him, as if something there might answer for him. "Aiden got into some trouble a few months back," Dalton said. "A fight. A bad one." Lucas stiffened. "With who?" Dalton hesitated again. "That's not my place to say. Charges were filed, then withdrawn. Whole thing got messy." Lucas leaned forward. "Where is he now?" Dalton looked away. "No one's seen him for about 2 weeks." The words punched through Lucas's ribs. 2 weeks. "He's missing?" Lucas asked, barely managing the question. Dalton didn't respond directly. His silence did the talking. Anger, cold, controlled, spread through Lucas's veins. "And no one thought I deserved to know?" "You were deployed," Dalton replied softly. "Your mom didn't want to distract you. As if losing his brother was a minor inconvenience. Lucas stepped back, muscles coiling. "I'm going to find him," Dalton didn't stop him. "Be careful who you ask, Lucas. This town isn't the same anymore." Lucas didn't look back. He started with people who used to know Aiden. His brother had always been a restless soul. Talented, brilliant at times, but prone to the wrong crowd. Still, Aiden was good-hearted. Lucas refused to believe he'd simply vanished at the gas station. The clerk froze when Lucas asked about him. At the cafe, two teenagers whispered his name and went quiet the moment Lucas turned. Even Pastor Avery at the church shifted uncomfortably, offering only, "We're all praying." Praying for what? No one would say. Lucas's frustration mounted like a storm. Every person he talked to offered a half-truth wrapped in fear, as if saying the wrong sentence might trigger an explosion. By midday, sweat clung to his shirt, and adrenaline kept him walking. That's when he turned down Birchwood Lane, a road he hadn't walked in years. At the end of it stood the old community center, the place where Aiden used to hang out with friends, where he trained for boxing matches, where Lucas had taught him how to throw his first punch. As Lucas approached, he saw a figure sitting on the steps, Greg Turner, Aiden's best friend. Or at least he used to be. Greg had always been bold, always loud, but now he looked worn down, eyes sunken, jittery at the sight of Lucas. Greg stood quickly. "Man, I didn't think he'd be back so soon." "Greg," Lucas said, his voice steady but urgent. "I need to know what happened." Greg swallowed hard. "Look, people weren't supposed to drag you into this." "Into what?" Greg ran a hand over his face, torn between guilt and fear. "Aiden got into it with someone important. Someone you don't mess with." "Name," Lucas demanded. Greg hesitated, then whispered, "Blake Crawford." Lucas felt the name like a blade. The Crawfords were one of the wealthiest families in the county, influential, untouchable. Blake, the oldest son, had a reputation for using that power like a weapon. What happened between them? Lucas pressed. Greg's voice dropped. "There was a party. Aiden called Blake out for something. Said he wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. They fought. Blake got hurt. Not bad, but enough. After that, everything changed. People started turning on Aiden. Rumors, lies, things I know weren't true. And then he disappeared." Greg nodded, eyes glistening. "He said someone was following him. Said the Crawfords wouldn't let it go. I told him to lay low, but, man, I didn't think he'd actually." His voice broke. Lucas felt the weight of the town's silence settle into place. It wasn't avoidance. It was fear. Fear of a family powerful enough to bury the truth along with whoever threatened it. "Where was he last seen?" Lucas asked. Greg hesitated. "Lucas, you shouldn't go there." Lucas stepped closer, voice steel. "Where?" Greg finally answered. "The riverbank behind the Crawford estate." Lucas froze. Memories flooded back. Summers fishing there, racing Aiden along the water's edge. But now, even saying the name felt dangerous. A place no one wanted him to go. A place everyone avoided mentioning. A place where the trail went cold, without another word. Lucas turned and started walking. Past the quiet houses, past the fields swaying beneath the afternoon sun. Each step carried him deeper into the truth the town had buried. He reached the narrow path leading toward the river. The light dimmed under the canopy of trees. The air grew colder, heavier, as if warning him to turn back. But Lucas didn't stop. Not when the path curved. Not when the sound of rushing water filled his ears. Not even when he reached the clearing, the exact spot Greg had described, and saw something half buried near the edge of the riverbank. A piece of fabric, torn mud-stained, and unmistakably belonging to Aiden, Lucas's. Breath hitched. The silence of the town suddenly made perfect sense, and as he knelt to lift the fabric from the ground, one truth settled over him like a shadow stretching across the water. Whatever happened here wasn't an accident. And somewhere beyond the river's bend, the truth waited, darker, deeper, and far from finished.